I am Karthik Raja and this is Angler Radio channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about a grid layout. So in the very first video, which is past video, we have discussed about flexbox layout, and in this video we are going to discuss about a grid layout. So what is the difference between a grid layout and a flex layout? Why we even use a grid in CSS? Okay. There is a question which I in my early days I had, why we even use grid layout, we have flex layout. I think because in most of our application, almost like more than 60 to 70% we will be using flex layout, right? So I thought, what is the use of grid layout? We can handle number of columns by width, right? For example, if a container, there are imagine there are 6 div inside the container, and each div is 100 pixel, and the container is going to be just 400 pixel. So if you put it in flex and flex wrap, what will happen? First 4 div will be in the first row, and next 2 will be in the second row. Okay, so there is a so what is the real thing is, when the width reduces, only if you have put a flex 0 0, it is not going to grow or shrink. So which is and all some tough thing, and you have to carefully handle those things, right? But in grid layout, they basically say grid layout is for 2-dimensional and flex is for 1-dimensional, because in flex, as we know, only we will be using writing CSS things in row specific, justify content, or column specific, align items. In a grid, you can write for both rows and columns, right? You can decide the number of columns and a number of rows. So that is a very important thing in grid. So the very first advantage of grid is you can decide the number of columns. In flexbox, you cannot decide the number of columns. Okay, only you can use flex wrap. Even if you use flex wrap, you cannot decide the number of columns. It is only going to align it according to the width and what you can say, number of columns is going to get decided automatically, and you are not going to decide the number of columns. So that is a drawback in flex layout. So only so we are using grid in CSS. So first property we will be seeing in grid is grid template columns. So throughout this video we will have an example of like 6 div inside a container. So 6 div are respectively A, B, C, D and F. Okay, so in a grid template columns we will go through one by one. First using units, grid template column 200 pixel 200 pixel. Okay, what will happen now? You will have 2 columns, 3 rows, because we are having 6 div, right? Each column, each div will have a 200 pixel width, and the number of columns, how it is decided here is, because you are giving only 2 units, right? 200 pixel 200 pixel. For example, if you want 3 rows and 2 columns, you would give like grid template columns 200 pixel 200 pixel 200 pixel, or for easy manner I am telling grid template columns 100 pixel 200 pixel 300 pixel. Okay, so in how it will look like, it will have 2 rows, and in first row A, B, C will be there, in second row D, E, F will be there. Okay, and also how it will look like, A will have 100 pixel, B will have 200 pixel width, C will have 300 pixel width, right? So this is grid template columns. But when you want when you don't want to decide the unit, whatever the container width it going to take, you want to have equal width, right? So in this case you will be using FR. FR is called a fraction, okay, fraction of available space. So in grid template columns we will be defining grid template columns 1FR 1FR 1FR. What will happen if first row with this 300 pixel ABC, each is going to take 100 pixel width. Okay. So very simple. Remember, fraction is used when you want to take assign equal width for equal width from the whatever the irrespective of the width in the container. Okay, you can also define like 1FR 2FR 3FR. okay. So what will happen, for example, if the container width is 600 pixel and you have defined grid template columns 1FR 2FR 3FR, A will take 100 pixel, B will take 200 pixel, C will take 300 pixel. Okay, so I have even between I have told like for equal width grid template columns 1FR 1FR 1FR. Instead of writing 3 times 1FR, we have a code like a repeat of 3 comma 1FR. What this says is we are repeating 3 times 1FR property. So there will be 3 columns and each will have one fraction, right? Okay, now next we are going to see grid template rows, right? So rows also same thing, unit and without unit. Grid template rows 100 pixel 200 pixel. Okay, so what will happen, we have 6 div and only for A height will be, it is a row, right? So it defines a height. For A it will be 100 pixel, for B it will be 200 pixel. For all other divs like C, D, E, F, height it will take auto height, right? Auto height depends upon the size of the content and available space. Okay, so now we are defining both. We can see what will happen when you define both column and rows. Okay, so when you define both column and rows, for example, grid template columns repeat 3 comma 1FR, grid template column rows repeat 2 comma 1FR. What it is telling? It is telling we are going to have 2 rows and 3 columns, right? So ABC in the first row, D, E, F in the second row, and each will take a space, even space, right? Okay, so if container width is 300 pixel, A will have 100 pixel, each of the div is going to have 100 pixel. Okay, so in flexbox we cannot define how many rows and columns we want, right? So this is the advantage of grid layout. Next we are going to see a property called grid template areas. So grid template areas is a very useful property in the grid layout. So I will tell you how it will be used. For example, imagine we are declaring grid template columns 200 pixel 1FR. What it means, we are going to have 2 columns. So first column will be 200 pixel width and second column 1FR, whatever the remaining available space it is going to take. Okay, so grid template rows 70 pixel 1FR 60 pixel. What it tells, first row will be 60 pixel and last row will be 60 pixel, first row will be 70 pixel. 1FR means so remaining whatever the available space, the fraction it is going to take. Okay, so this is we have defined and keep it as it is. We can discuss. Imagine we are going to have a small layout in which we will be having a header one and then below the header one main page, and in main page a sidebar will be there, and then we are going to have a footer which is a basic web home page layout, right? Header, footer, and then in between main page, in main page we will be having a sidebar. Dashboard also same layout, right? Okay, now I want the sidebar to be 200 pixel. Okay, in the main page sidebar is going to be 200 pixel, and whatever the remaining space the main page is going to take. Okay, and header is 70 pixel, footer is 60 pixel height. Okay, how we can we know the design. So in this case we will be using grid template areas. So as I defined, grid template columns 200 pixel 1 FR, which means 200 first column will be 200 pixel, second column will be 1 FR remaining space. Grid template rows 70 pixel 1 FR 60 pixel. First row will be 70 pixel height, second row 1 fraction, so third row 60 pixel. So 1 FR is going to take whatever the available remaining space it is going to take. Okay, in HTML I am having a header, sidebar, footer defined just in layout. Within the layout I have all these 4 div. Okay, in here how I will use the div template areas is, in div template areas I will be writing header in the first row. In the second row I will be writing sidebar main. Third row I will be writing footer. Okay, so what it means in grid template areas is to, in double quotation, header. So I am saying in the first row both 2 columns belong to the header section. Okay, so then second row sidebar main. So now the sidebar is going to take the exact 200 pixel and remaining space main. Third row footer, right? Third row is going to take the footer completely. See, for a grid template areas alone, you please refer, do your own research study, because this cannot be explained in audio. Though I have tried, it cannot be explained in audio. You try it yourself. Okay, so also in the same case, in grid template areas I want some part of a row or column to be empty. I can use grid template areas. For example, in the footer I want the left side of the footer to be empty, so that in down to the sidebar some empty space will be there, which is going to look good. So what I will be defining is grid template areas, double quotation header, then in second row double quotation sidebar main, in third row double quotation dot, then footer. So this dot is what dot defines this column should be empty. There is also a shorthand in grid template. When you have a uniform first column width, second column width, and rows, right? So in this case you have a short type. Please, if you are watching this video, go and refer and study on your own. Okay, if you remember the first previous case where I told grid template rows 100 pixel, 200 pixel, and we have 6 div, right? So in this case what will happen, A will have 100 pixel, B will have 200 pixel height, and all the other 4 will have auto height. So when you don't want auto height but you want some particular unit, you can use, there is a property called grid auto columns or grid auto rows. In our case it is grid auto rows 100 pixel. So I will be writing grid template rows 100 pixel, 200 pixel, then grid auto rows 100 pixel. What will happen? A will take 100 pixel, B will take 200 pixel height, and all the remaining thing it is going to take 100 pixel height. Guys, then we have similar kind of properties we saw in flex layout, like In flex layout we have this property, we had this property flex direction. Flex direction by default it will be row, and when we declare flex direction column, the main axis will change. Main axis will change to column and the cross axis will change to row. Same thing we have in grid also. The property name is called grid auto flow. So by default grid auto flow is row, and here the main axis is row and the cross axis is column. So it will fill items left to right. But in when you do grid auto flow column, it will fill items top to bottom. Okay. Also you have some more property, dense. It is called dense. Grid auto flow row dense, grid auto flow column dense. Okay. See, I have never used this property throughout my entire career. Okay, I have around 3 years 10 months experience in Angular development, but I have never used this thing, grid auto flow row dense or grid auto flow column dense. But what they say is this property is used. For example, as we say, we are going to use the same two column 3 row thing. Okay, but what we define is A is going to take the span of 2 rows and 2 columns. What will happen now? The div A will be very big. After that a B will come. In the second row, second column, you will have an empty space in a normal grid auto flow row. Okay. Then you will have a C and D, E, F in the respective third and fourth rows. Okay. So it has become 4 rows because A is occupying 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay. So you have an empty space there in second row, second column. When you use row dense, what will happen is the D, it will go to the second row, second column, and E, it will move from fourth row, first column to third row, second column. Okay, this is what they are saying, row dense. Okay, I don't know the real world use of this, because we won't be using like this, we won't be defining like this. Okay, whatever the empty space, pick some random thing and put it there in the empty space. We won't be doing this. So ChatGPT is telling grid row dense, it is used in Pinterest, and in Pinterest that image section, and grid auto flow column dense, it will be used in kind of magazine things. Okay, so that is all I know of these two properties, and I have never used these two properties. Okay, so we can move to the next. So next we are going to see the property called justify items. So in flex layout we had justify contents, in grid we have justify items. So both are used in rows perspective, right? Both are used in consideration for rows. For columns we have align. Okay, first we shall see about justify items. So in justify items there are properties like stretch, start, center, end. So in a table you call it cell, right? First row, first column, you call it cell or grid. So this property is going to work on basis on the grid only. So for example, if there are 6 div inside a container, each div is going to have a 60 pixel height and a 60 pixel width, right? Okay, but in grid you have defined grid template columns 3 3 repeat of 3 comma 140 pixel. Okay, so when you use justify items stretch, it is going to have, actually the div should have a, b or c. Actually the div should have only 60 pixel width, but instead when you use stretch, right, it will occupy the fill width defined for the grid or a cell. You can imagine it as a cell. If the cell is 140 pixel, irrespective of whatever the width you have defined for the div, it is going to stretch to the entire 140 pixel. For the other properties, start, center or end, it is going to be only a div is going to be only a box like 60 pixel height and 60 pixel width. Okay, then justify items start. So what this will do, it will not move all the a, b, c, d, e, f to the start of the container. What it will do is, only within the cell it will move the each a, b or c to the each to the left of the each cell. For example, if in row 1 column 1 a, div a will be there, within the div within the cell a, within the first cell, a will be moving to the left. If justify items is end, a will move to the right within the cell. Okay, and the center, a will move to center within the cell. So this is what justify items in grid layout does mean. So next property is align items. So in flex layout also we had align items, align content, align self. So in grid layout we are now seeing align items. So align is basically used for a vertical thing, or in in columns perspective or columns consideration. Height, so only it is going to decide the height, and in case of grid, everything is going to be happen only within the grid or within the cell. Align items stretch, just like a justify items stretch, it the div is going to stretch the entire width irrespective of the width you have defined for the div a or b or c or d or e, f. Align items, it is going to stretch to the fill height irrespective of the height you have defined for the box, each box. Then align start, it will place the div box vertically at the top of the cell, right. Align items center, it will place vertically center. Align items then align items end, it will place vertically at the bottom. Okay, when you combine both align and justify, center, for example, if you want to exactly center, if you want a box exactly to be center in the cell, you will be using both align item center and justify items center, right. So one more property is there. In case instead of writing justify item center, align item center, you can just directly use this property, place items center. So what place items center means, placing the item center both vertically and horizontally, which means instead of writing justify item center and align item center, using a single property called place item center. But what I will say is, don't confuse using such property. Directly use just justify content center, justify item center and align item center. In grid also we have the justify content property, just the same like in flex layout we had justify content. So what is the difference between justify content and justify items is, justify items is only for a cell specific or a grid specific. As I told, row 1 column 1 it is called cell, and justify items, it is going to only work out for items within the cell and not for the entire grid. So for the entire grid it is justify content. For example, there are 6 divs, right, outside the container. If you want to move the entire container to left or right within the row, within the fill with within the row, you are using justify content. So justify content start, what will happen? All this entire grid is going to move to the left of the website. Okay, left of the website. For example, A B C D E F, first row A B C, second row D E F, all those 6 things will be moved to the left. Second thing, second property, center, everything will be moved to the center. Justify content end, all the 6 things will be moved to the left of the page. Okay, entire grid it will be moved to the left of the page. Space between what it will happen? It will more concentrate on the space between each cell and not on the space over the edges. Over the edges means, for example, A, B, C is there, right? To the leftmost corner of the page and A there will be no space, but between A and B there will be space. B and C there will be space. B will be in the center of the page and C will be in the rightmost corner of the page. There will be no space between C and the rightmost corner of the page. Okay, this is space between. Space around, it is like leaving some space around the edges alone. Okay, for example, between A and the leftmost corner of the page there will be 100 pixel. A and B it will be 200 pixel. B and C 200 pixel. Again then C to rightmost corner of the page it will be some 100 pixel. Okay, then justify content space evenly. So space evenly is one the thing you are going to use mostly. Okay, what it will do? Leftmost corner of the page to A 200 pixel, A to B 200 pixel, B to C 200 pixel, and C to rightmost corner of the page 200 pixel. Okay, you are moving each grid and entire grid. Okay, you are working on the entire grid. Entire cells are moving, not like in justify items. Only within the box it was moving, right? And no, it is not working in the same way. So in grid also you have align content. In align content, what will happen? The entire grid moves to the top of the page. Align content center, entire grid moves to the center. Vertically middle, it will vertically middle. Align content end, vertically bottom. Space between, same. If we have 2 rows, first row will be in the topmost corner of the page, second row will be in the bottommost corner of the page. Bottommost page, not corner, bottom, and first row will be in the top of the page. Space around, same what we saw in align items, justify items, same in align justify content, space around, same in align content, space around, but here it will be, everything will be in vertically. 100 pixel from top to first row, then first row to second row there will be 200 pixel, then second row to bottom there will be some 100 pixel. This is space around, space evenly. 200 pixel from top to first row, 200 pixel row 1 to row 2, 200 pixel from row 2 to bottom. Okay, this is all align content. Here also you have a place content, but I won't recommend to use place content because mostly it will be a confusion. So we have one more important property, grid column start. So what grid column start will do is it will define when the column to be started. For example, if we have, as we discuss in a container, there are 6 divs. Okay, we are assigning a grid column start 2. What will happen? In the first row, first column will be empty, second column A will start, then B, then in second row we will have a C, D, E, and in third row we will have just F. Okay, this is what will happen. And in third row just F will be there, and after that 2 columns will be empty. So you can also have multiple grid column starts. Okay, that and all you try, work out, and you visibly see the outcome. Okay, that cannot be explained in an audio. Interesting. If A has a grid row start 2, how it will look is, row 1 will have a first column, first cell will be empty, then BC. Row 2, A will start in row 2 first column. Okay, that is what grid row start 2 alone means. Then in second row will have A, D, E. Third row will have F and two empty columns, empty cells. Okay. If A is defined both grid row start 2 and grid column start 2, what will happen is in row 1 directly B will start, B, C, D. Then in row 2 E, A, F. This is how it will look. Okay. So these things you try, work out and see the output. This cannot be explained in audio. Same manner you also have a grid row end and also grid column end also. Same way in flex we had align self for writing styles for a particular div, right? But we don't have a justify self in flex because flex things are not placed inside any cell or grid. Okay. Here in grid we have both justify self and align self. So justify self, it works horizontally, align self works vertically. Properties are like in justify self, left, center, right, stretch. Okay. In align self, properties are top, bottom, center and stretch again. Lastly, in grid template columns or grid template rows, you also have a minimum max thing. Particularly in grid template columns, you have minimum max means minimum 200 pixel, maximum 1 FR, that like you can set. So lastly, inline grid. So same as we saw in flex layout, between difference between flex and inline flexes. Flex will take the entire width of the row and it almost acts like a block, placing items left to right in the entire row. Whereas inline flex, it will be for example inline grid also same. It only takes the width of the content as the entire width. It won't take the entire row as the entire width. For example, if you write a hello grid world, in here you use grid for the word grid. What will happen is hello first row, grid second row, world in the third row. It will only happen because grid takes the entire row. Same if you have used inline grid, what will happen is hello grid world, it will all three appear in the same row. Okay, thank you very much, and we can see the next topics in next videos.